On August 15, 1947, British rule over India ended, marking the beginning of a self-ruled nation that would spend the next 6 decades struggling to modernize its massive economy. Evaluated in 2013, the country's per capita income was estimated at just 3,264 rupees per month. This figure leaves India well behind other major nations. China's is 3 times higher, while the US average is 15 times that of India. This lack of foundational wealth across the population creates a high level of difficulty for a country attempting to fund its own development and provide for its citizens. Following 1921, population rose rapidly due to a widening gap. Better public health dropped the death rate to 7.2, while the birth rate stayed high at 22.1. This pushed the population past 1.21 billion by 2011, creating heavy population pressure. This pressure is compounded by absolute poverty. In 2011, 269 million people, roughly 22% of the country, could not earn the 28 to 33 rupees a day required to meet basic caloric needs. Furthermore, wealth is highly concentrated at the top. While the top 5% of households control 38% of India's wealth, the bottom 60% of households have control over just 13%. This combination of rapid growth and inequality forces the government to mobilize massive resources for healthcare and education, while the lack of industrial expansion leaves much of the labor force unemployed. With few industrial alternatives, 58% of India's working population remains engaged in agricultural activities to pursue a livelihood. This chart highlights a major sector imbalance. While agriculture employs the majority of the workforce, it contributes a little over 17% to India's gross domestic product. Productivity is low because the heavy population pressure leaves very little land available per person. Most are forced into manual labor for low wages using outdated technology. Consequently, agriculture acts as a heavy weight on the economy, requiring the most workers to produce the least relative value. Despite these challenges, India has built a defensive line through high capital formation. To support a growing population, economists estimate India needs to invest 14% of its GDP. By 2011, the saving rate stood at 31.7%, allowing for large-scale investment in public utilities and infrastructure. This investment is guided by a tactical playbook of 5-year plans, a process that began in 1951. Planning allows the country to set clear priorities, mobilize resources at the least cost, and rectify failures by reviewing the results at the end of every 5-year period. Through 12 plan periods, this disciplined approach has provided the structural stability needed for the economy to grow at a higher rate than in the past. Agriculture eventually shifted from an economic weight to a survival engine. Between 1950 and 2012, food grain production rose from 55 million tons to 259 million. This growth significantly reduced India's dependence on foreign food imports, which have now become almost nil. Agriculture also became a source of foreign exchange. By 2012, items like tea, sugar, and tobacco accounted for 12.3% of India's total exports. By securing the food supply and generating export revenue, the sector provided the basic economic fuel required for the country to begin industrializing. In 1956, the government began an aggressive industrial push, emphasizing heavy industries with the public sector taking the lead. However, by the early 1990s, many public sector undertakings were reporting losses due to mismanagement and the limitations of a rigid licensing system. In 1991, the government responded with the LPG model: liberalization, privatization, and globalization. This policy removed the license system and allowed international players to compete in the domestic market, while encouraging Indian companies to explore foreign territories. While growth fluctuated due to infrastructure gaps and petroleum prices, the LPG model forced domestic companies to strengthen their quality control and customer care to withstand international competition. Today, the labor force is slowly moving away from the agrarian trap, with the percentage of workers in agriculture dropping to 51% by 2012. These workers are migrating toward more productive areas. Industry now accounts for 22.4% of the workforce, while the service sector has grown to employ 26.5%. The Indian economy remains a work in progress, defined by the constant friction between structural problems like poverty and the growth engines of planning and reform. For your exam, focus on this tension: the debuffs of population and inequality versus the buffs of high savings and the 1991 industrial shift.